Oh, hello there, and welcome to a very special episode of StoryStream, the Vancouver Public Library's story time for adults. My name is Jonna, and I'm a member of the Programming and Learning Department. Today, I'm coming to you from the Creative Residency offices on Level 8 of the Central Branch, which is located on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples, just like all locations of the Vancouver Public Library. The Creative Residency offices serve as a work location for the Indigenous storytellers that work with the library. The VPL Indigenous Storyteller in Residence program was created in 2008 in recognition of Indigenous peoples in Canada and the importance of storytelling as a way to learn about and from Indigenous communities in Vancouver. Through the Storyteller in Residence, we seek to honor Indigenous cultures and promote intercultural understanding and communication between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. This residency was the first program of its kind at a public library in British Columbia, and only the second at a Canadian public library. The Indigenous Storyteller in Residence program has now become essential to the library's public programming. The painting you see behind me was created by Eden Fine Day, who is the 2022 Indigenous Storyteller at VPL. She is an author, a musician, a visual artist, and proud Cree woman. She is passionate about her culture and how it places her in relationship with all other living beings, including the earth, the animal people, and the plant people. Eden is driven by her optimism about the possibilities of educating kids on Indigenous realities in a kind and empowering way. Eden's first book, a novella entitled Dreamwalker, is forthcoming later this year. Today, Eden will be reading her story, Hard Truths. This work is about Eden explaining white supremacy and police violence to her children. Combining astute political analysis with deep feelings and tenderness, this story takes a clear-eyed look at the harsh social realities facing marginalized peoples living on this colonized land while grounding itself with the love and gentility needed to overcome and move forward. Without further ado, please enjoy this personal essay written and performed by Eden Fine Day.
Hard Truths. Prologue. I am 12, standing in front of the housing co-op we live in just off of Commercial Drive in Vancouver, BC. It's the late 1980s, and Commercial is still a rundown mix of immigrants and artists. The first Starbucks hasn't yet moved in. Poor people can still afford to live here. A cop cruiser turns onto our street, driving slowly, patrolling. I watch it drive past me through lowered lids, hostility oozing from me. Get the fuck out of here, I say quietly to myself. This is our neighborhood. You don't belong here. I keep my eyes on the cruiser until it turns the corner and drives off. I'm a little surprised at myself. I hadn't realized until now how strongly I feel about the police. But there is a divide, and it's obvious to me which side I'm on. Recently, I found myself trying to explain racial hatred to my 11-year-old son. It was a sad conversation for me, because as the words were coming out of my mouth, I realized that I didn't want to be speaking them, that maybe I was harming my child by telling him the truth. Unlike Black parents, I didn't have to speak the words to my children as a matter of life or death. My son is white passing and will never have to face the type of state-sponsored violence that Black children do. But I stand in solidarity with my Black brothers and sisters who suffer alongside us under colonialism. So it's important to me that my children understand the peril their peers will face simply because of the color of their skin. And he had overheard me talking about recent Black Lives Matter demonstrations and had asked me to explain the issue to him, so I did. It's not the first time I've talked to my children about white supremacy. They know what Indian residential schools did to their mushum. They know what Canada has done to First Nations of this land. They've heard me talk about white violence towards Black people before. But now it feels more real, maybe because they're getting older and I know they can understand more. It's dangerous to be Black in America, I tell him, just like it's dangerous to be Black or visibly Indigenous in Canada. When police see someone with darker skin, they automatically assign less value than they would someone with white skin. Many of them don't know they do it. It's an unconscious judgment that results in people getting shot and killed. Why do they shoot to kill, my boy asks me. Why can't they just try to get the weapons out of their hands? I sigh. There is no good way for me to explain this because there is no good explanation. I start with an example. I used to work with the police, you know that, right? He nods. There was this one cop I worked with. She was a corporal. I don't know why I use her rank. My children know nothing about military ranks. I asked her that same question once. Wouldn't it be better to shoot someone in the leg, I said, to make it impossible for them to get away? Why do cops have to kill people? You know what she said? He shakes his head. She said that the bad guys are out to kill the police, so the police have to respond with deadly force. She said they're trained to respond only with deadly force. When they aim for the chest. You see, baby, the police feel like they're the victims in this world. They think the bad guys are all out to get them, and the public doesn't support them, and so they feel very sorry for themselves. Honestly, to hear me saying these words out loud, I was embarrassed for the RCMP. I was embarrassed on behalf of adults everywhere. Speaking out loud made the immaturity of it seem so much more obvious. I felt like I was describing the plot of a Lego movie. There are many police forces all over the world, proving that it's possible to be a cop and not have a gun. But in our society, we've convinced ourselves that police have to be armed. Perhaps guns are part of the allure of policing. Would fewer people want to join the force if the job didn't come with a gun? Some police officers have been pretending to shoot people since they were kids. Maybe there wouldn't be an attraction to the job if they were only given batons and tasers. Victims are violent people, I once heard Byron Katie say. For a second, I felt confused. Huh? Then the profundity of it hit me in the gut, and I recognized the truth of it. We are most violent when we feel victimized. That's when we strike out, seemingly out of self-defense, but actually out of resentment, self-pity, and entitlement. I've seen it in myself, and it's everywhere right now. Police entities are violent, and always have been, charged with righting the perceived wrongs of the world as seen by the colonial state. They move through the world feeling constantly threatened. There is no self-awareness. They don't see the irony of the fact that police are now the scary perpetrators of violence in our neighborhoods. They're too busy telling themselves and each other how bad they've got it, how unappreciated they are for putting their lives on the line day after day. Blue lives matter to them, but other lives don't. They don't seem to realize that there is no such thing as a blue life, that it's a profession, and it's chosen. Attitudes about victimhood are contagious. I harbored them myself briefly when I worked for the RCMP. It felt good to be a part of collective misery, to contribute to the increasing low morale that abounds within police forces. Man, I'd exclaim after reading a surveillance report and uploading pertinent details to the database I managed. Those drug dealers sure spend a lot of time at the gym and eating out at restaurants. I'm in the wrong line of work. I was posing, mostly, play acting, pivoting so drastically from the anti-police stance I had been raised with to being one of them was a jarring cultural shift, but in a crazy, exhilarating sort of way. It was liberating that I could so quickly drop a belief I had held dear for more than 30 years. It reminded me of the feeling I had when I moved to France for a year. Everything familiar was gone, and this new culture had completely replaced it. Adapt quickly or suffer. And so I was born anew. When I was in France, it had happened. A phone call telling me that my brother had been found dead in his apartment back in Canada, that he had probably been dead for 3 or 4 days by the time they found him. Everything I had known as my reality had been pulled out from under me. The world had warped. Adapt or die. Nothing had mattered after that, because everything was absurd. I didn't have to worry about having a worldview that made sense, a code to live by, values that guided me, because that was impossible. I was living in France, Brian was dead, and nobody noticed or cared. Fuck it, I might as well go work for the police. I had been a chameleon all of my life, so pretending to be pro-cop was actually pretty easy for me. It was seductive too. I could feel the tug on my heart, how easily I could buy into the angst. If I never switched back to one of my many other identities, if I didn't code switch anymore, and made my identity as an employee of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police my only identity, how easy it would be to join them in believing that poor people are them, and we are us. My children don't understand how cops could shoot a 12-year-old child. It's so far out of the realm of possibility for them that they've never even imagined such a thing. They are honest in their innocence, and I hate breaking this bad news to them. As the words leave my mouth, I feel the violence of them. It's a violent truth I'm telling. Am I complicit in making this world a more violent place by teaching them about this violence? It feels like I'm stripping my children of their innocence. It is a one-way street, this knowledge. It changes forever the picture they will have of the world. It's a relief to hear their shock and dismay at the facts I'm relaying. A world in which murdering a 12-year-old boy is normal is madness. I'm glad they see this, that the insanity of it is so clear to them. They still have love in their hearts, my boys. They are able to see clearly, to reason. They haven't been completely programmed yet by mainstream culture, where teachers, kids' books, kids' clothing, and kids' television glorify the police. Their disbelief and horror at such atrocities reminds me that we are not living in a time when things are allowed to progress as nature intended. We are living in a world where humans create weapons and invent reasons to justify killing a child. He was black, they'll say. He was tall for his age. He had a toy gun that wasn't orange. I felt threatened. I'm the victim here. It won't matter that the threat was subjective. I felt threatened, so I killed him. I think about Tamir Rice's mother, the impotent rage that she must harbor, knowing there is no justice for her boy, that she was unable to protect him from a world that hated him and hates her too. She raised her child in a land where the police kill people that look like her and her children. There are no charges pending. No one will be required to take responsibility for her son's death. I don't want to live in a world in which Samaria Rice has lost her son, a world in which she lost him to racially motivated violence carried out by the state. It is ludicrous that we do. Why aren't we in the streets screaming? How are we all going about our days as though nothing has happened? Is it that we don't care? That can't be it. I know many people care. So we care, but we have bills to worry about. We care, but protesting could get us killed. We care, but many of us are unable to carry any more grief. We're barely holding on as it is. We care, but... My younger son comes into the room during this conversation, listening intently. It's dangerous for dark-skinned people to be seen with any type of weapon, I tell them both. My little one speaks up. Imagine if you were just walking down the street and you had a knife in your hand and then the cops see you and they just shoot you. He laughs at the absurdity of his statement. Funny you should say that, I say. That's exactly what happened to John T. Williams in Seattle. He was an Indigenous man, a carver, and he was walking down the street with his carving knife in his hand, and a cop shot and killed him. I don't mention that he was deaf. I'm already in agony. A gloom settles over us. There is darkness here. These are hard truths I'm telling, but they are not the whole story. The world is changing, I tell my boys, willing it to be, speaking it into existence. Their youth, their brilliance, their love, their compassion are an opportunity, and I seize it. With each new generation, people are waking up to the truth that we are all connected to each other and to the earth. Things seem bad now, but they will be better one day soon. In fact, I continue, the world became a more beautiful place when each of you were born. Really? Exclaims the smaller one. Yes, I say, absolutely. For I believe the love I feel for these two humans has made the world a better place. I close my eyes and see it radiating outward, leaving me growing larger than our home, expanding to encompass the city, the earth, this galaxy. I picture my love for them having a healing effect on humanity, changing the balance of lightness and darkness in the universe ever so slightly. In my mind's eye, I can see the undulating pulse of the earth and the human experience on her, the animals at peace in their natural habitat. My love for my children is the same love a turtle has for her eggs. It's the same as the police have for their children. It is both selfish and selfless. Samaria Rice might understand what I'm talking about. There are hard truths, yes, but love is also true, and I'm grateful for how much of it my kids bring to my world. I'm sorry that I have to tell them the other truth, that the white man's world is filled with much ugliness, that white men can shoot black children and not be punished for it, that white people have spread their sickness across the globe, the emptiness, the selfishness, the fear, the greed, that they have raped and pillaged everything in their path in order to gain worldly riches as their spirits wither, that they have separated themselves from us, from the earth, from even themselves and their own children, from their spirits. This is not the world I want for my children. I hope we learn from the loss of Tamir and so many other Black boys and men. I hope we learn from the loss of Tina Fontaine and so many other Indigenous girls and women. I hope that the love my children created in me when they were born rises up through all of us and takes its rightful place in our society. Epilogue. A few years ago, when my youngest was 5 or 6, he fell asleep with his arms around me. Just before drifting off, and without any prompting, he said, "Why don't people understand that we're all one big family?" I was moved. I was impressed with this little one who understood something so important at his tender age. "I don't know," I said, as I stroked his hair and his breathing changed. "You know it, though, and so do I."